Well, hi there, everyone. It's Kristi. Welcome to a very spontaneous hangout. A few of us got just put up a link and decided to have a chat about a lot of the things that have been happening in the States. And we all have things to say, and we all have perspectives, and there are many topics to discuss. Hopefully, we'll get through quite a lot of those in the next hour or so. But I think to start off, I'm going to turn it over to a man who has a way with words. He's got a blog. He's well-written, he's articulate, he captures emotions in a way that I know often makes me understand things much better. So would you take it away, Martin, and give us what I'm sure are your very considered thoughts on the matter?
So, well, I want to hear a bit from you guys too. I'm kind of
Of
interested
course,
in
yeah,
what you
yeah,
guys have to say as
yes.
well.
Just if you want to give some initial
But
reaction.
yeah, but I
Yeah.
guess my initial reaction on Saturday when I saw when I heard about Trump speaking and I heard about the protest. The thing is, Saturday was actually my birthday. I was actually turning.
Man,
I was actually looking forward to just enjoying the day, and then I saw the protest, and that was kind of discouraging for me. I think, and my thoughts on this are really complicated. They're a little difficult from. It's a little bit difficult for me to come up with uh, one like concise position on it. Um, but I guess you know, one thing that I could say uh, is that the alt right and that whole anti SJW movement that kind of protects them is something that has to be fought, something that has to be opposed very strongly, and something that has had some very discouraging elements. The difficult thing in all this, and I've seen a lot of people, talk about this, and yeah, I think this is something that not just I mean, I think Black people are a major part of the discussion, but I think this is something that we as a country
Mm.
should talk about too. Is how are we going to stop it? We've been trying for 150 years. We've tried a lot of different tactics. Um, so the thing that I've been struggling and scratching my head with is how are we going to stop this rhetoric that institutionalizes racism and is threatening to do it to a very disturbing degree. And right now too, I'm just terrified as to exactly where this is going to go. Are we going to um, are we people are starting to buy guns, or a lot of people on the alt right already have guns and use them in their protests. Like uh, I'm just a little um, scared and a bit vigilant as to how this is going to go in the future. And the ideas that I'm brainstorming in my own mind that I'm interested in hearing about you guys from is how to stop it.
Well, if I could, I guess I'll take a sort of the person hosting the Hangouts privilege here and go second. I know that for me, being in Europe, sorry, background noise, there's a time lag. And so for me, it kind of all hit at once. I wasn't aware of the march that happened that earlier, and then I was doing a debate on Saturday. And shortly after my debate ended, I was kind of winding down, and it was a couple hours later, but I was watching the news, and then it all started to hit Twitter and the news. And it feels like in a lot of ways it's not stopped yet. Like it's what that mentality of the protests, the violence, and then the terrorist attack. And I think we need to call it what it is, which is a terrorist attack that happened. And then the way that it was all handled and the reactions to it and the counter reactions and the reactions to the counter reactions. And I feel in a lot of ways like a boil has burst. For not for people who live this every day, but for the people who walk around not really being affected by it, because this is so ugly and we cannot look away. The president has ensured that we cannot look away because he is siding with white supremacists and defending them. But what I
Yeah, I mean,
do, and
sorry.
sorry, let me just finish. I'll say something really quick. I didn't live in the 1960s. And what I've been noticing, at least, from the media that I consume, which is CNN and MSNBC and the mainstream media, in the 1960s, I would imagine if there were talk shows, they would have been populated by conservative white men. And I'm seeing, because of representation, substantive representation here, as well as descriptive representation, the voices in the media having this conversation, I think, are so much more complicated, and things that need to be said on the airwaves are being said. And this is not enough, but it is finally a recognition that we can't then lull back into a safe slumber of ignorance. So in terms of going forward, what I would hope is that we don't then just carve this off, as Republicans tend to do, and say, oh, these are the white supremacists and these are the problems, and then we don't have to deal with institutional racism. We don't have to deal with these systems of oppression. And I'm hoping, because of the resistance and people being engaged now and these issues being in the media with more diversity than ever before, that we can have better conversations, because hopefully more people are listening to voices that they normally don't hear. So Martin, sorry to go on a bit there.
No, yeah, I agree with much of that. I don't think I'm trying. It's hard for me to get like a handle, like a finger on exactly what's going on and how things are developing. But I my guess right now is that it's not going away. Like this boil that's burst is not something that, is something that's burst and people are going to walk away from. I don't think that the white supremacists are going to walk away from it based on their rhetoric and, the way they're talking. And by extension, I don't think that, I mean, I look on my friends list, right? A lot of people are talking about punching Nazis. A lot of people are talking about buying guns to protect themselves. A lot of people are talking about rallies and so on. Like, people on the left are really warming up. It seems like, to me, from my perspective, I mean, I could be wrong, but based on like my corner of the world and what I see from my friends and so on, and people on the right are becoming emboldened. You have David Duke tweeting out, you have Richard Spencer tweeting out, and you have their followers, making videos and being very enthusiastic. That my thinking is that this might be the beginning of um, something that's a lot larger.
Right.
So
Yeah, who does someone want to follow up on that, or any of those, pick up on any of those points? And thanks everybody for self-muting for background reasons. You're such good guests. So let's go to, maybe yeah, Michael, you're on a time frame.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, you can maybe talk too about your experiences if it's kind of reaching into the camp and what is happening. But if you don't want to talk about that, obviously, then don't feel like you have to. But yeah, your thoughts.
Yeah, well, like I suppose the same with you, Kristi. I've been kind of insulated from the whole thing. Social media has declined for me quite a lot over the last little while because I'm in the middle of the friggin' woods. But I did, it obviously came to my attention. I think I saw someone tweeting about the ridiculousness of the tiki torches first. I was like, what the crap's going on? And then the hashtag Charlottesville and all that sort of stuff came up, and I obviously got a bit more of a picture of the whole thing. And since then, I've read a bunch of stuff, and I saw some documentary things about it. Like I saw a Vice thing about it, and then I saw the stuff about Trump condemning both sides. And then obviously there's been a lot of talk on. I get a lot of my information from like the Late Show guys, so like Stephen Colbert and Trevor Noah and things like that. Them bringing up the ridiculousness of Trump's rhetoric and the situation and how he actually feels about it. The fact that when he first said on both sides, that was kind of like an off the cuff sort of thing. That's, and so what does he actually feel and believe? Does he feel the thing that he said off the cuff, kind of just improvising, or does he believe the written down statement that he read out 2 days later? and the fact that he's still got white supremacists in the White House with him, Steve Bannon and what's that other guy, the creepy guy who looks like Skeletor. These guys surrounding him who have open ties to white nationalism. And then there's the whole thing of like, I've been thinking a lot about the situation of the kind of the memeing and the ironic Nazi stuff, which I think we were going to talk about anyway, but how it kind of provides a cover. I tweeted out a thread this morning, just kind of blabbing off the top of my head about its kind of comparisons to Gamergate, and how in the Gamergate thing you had like a core group of open misogynists who were, abusing and harassing people in the game space, and then you had this larger group of people surrounding them who to some degree cared about ethics and game journalism or whatever. They thought that's what they were doing, and they were making excuses and normalizing and creating excusing the behavior of the actual the people and their deplorable actions. And it seems to me that there's kind of a similar situation where you've got the open white nationalists like David Duke. Like I was watching the Vice documentary about this, and the shit that David Duke was saying and the shit that some of the other people were saying, the stuff about how the Jews are controlling everything, all the same shit that you hear from that you think of when you think of Nazis. The Jews are controlling everything, and we need to preserve the white race and this and all that sort of stuff, and we need to get rid of the deplorables and you need to bring America back to the people who founded the nation and all this sort of crazy fucking bullshit, creating an ethno state. He literally said, I want to create an ethno state. And it's like, wow. And so you've got people like that, and then you've got people slightly a little bit removed from that, people like Lauren Southern and others who kind of cloak that sort of idea in this kind of anti-immigration stuff that I still consider pretty friggin' racist, but is not openly Nazi stuff, I suppose. The sort of stuff that if you called that person a Nazi, you'd get accused of just calling everyone you disagree with a Nazi. And then you've got the further kind of circle again of all the people who protect the free speech rights of all these deplorable pieces of shit, and the joking, the ironic Nazi salutes and all this sort of stuff that we get, and that we should be allowed to joke about this stuff because it does something, but it creates a cover for all that really deplorable stuff. And they love it. They do. We've seen writings on like the Daily Stormer and things like that about people saying, yeah, this is freaking great. People are providing a cover for us to continue to further our agenda, which is just like, and then there's all this stuff that's happened, and it's fucking, I hate it. It's awful.
Michael, can I put you on the spot here? Are you familiar with what the hate speech laws are in your home country?
In my home country?
Yeah.
Not exactly.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. I as far as I know, hate speech isn't protected under free speech.
And do you feel oppressed because of, if that's the case in your country?
What do you mean?
Like, do you feel oppressed that you can't go out and preach hate and peaceful ethnic genocide?
Well, no, but I like to think of myself as a good person.
but you don't feel like your free speech is being constrained in any way. But yeah, so. But
No,
Kevin, because I think there are also, well, if you want to finish up, but I was going to bring Kevin in on this to talk about, because I think hate speech laws are covered in the UK. So I wanted to just, because people.
I just think that like it's the kind of it's this mentality of like people from this thing, talking about, it's like it's the two sides thing. It's that the people who are fighting back against the Nazis are just as bad as the Nazis, and in the same way, it's like the people who are trying to protect people from hate speech and oppression and all that sort of stuff are just as bad as the people spouting that hate speech, because they're it's that weird, is it horseshoe theory? Is that what the fuck it is? It's ridiculous, but that's the kind of same mentality, right?
Sorry, I'm managing
Yes,
the chat. Sorry, yes, that's right. And Kevin, I see your mic is off. So are you ready to speak to UK speech laws in terms of hate speech? Or Kevin's, we can't hear you. We can do sound check. So if you are speaking, mate, we can't hear you. Then I guess I'm going to take it over. Yeah, so Danny, do you want to come in with your thoughts? And then Kristi, and then Tom. Tom's last because I love him. Because he's my patron.
Okay, sure. here's my 2 cents on the whole situation. I personally find it terrifying as someone whose people were victims of the Holocaust. Like, I'm Jewish, so. But even still, what happened in Charlottesville is something that, while disgusting and horrifying, is nothing really surprising or new, as America was built off the back of racism and white supremacy. So pretty much ever since the founding of our nation, it was like, this is mainly to address the people who are sending the hashtag "This is not us." Unfortunately, the racism and white supremacy has been with this country from the start.
And it's important to talk about institutional racism. You know, someone might say, I don't have, you know, I'm not a racist. And it could be perfectly true, but that doesn't mean that the system we're living in is one that is fair to everybody. And that's the problem. And when we have people who actually want to make it less fair and want to make people feel less welcome, then hopefully it draws a really clear line, I would hope, for people saying, okay, these things are linked. Like this kind of this doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Right.
Like Danny is saying, you know, this stuff has been here the whole time. I mean, it's not like these white nationalists have just popped out of a vacuum. It's not like the Nazis haven't been there. They've been there, but now they're feeling more and more emboldened by various things, and so they feel like they can come out and do this sort of shit, you know?
Right. Like, the white supremacists and the Ku Klux Klan were always there. Like, they never actually went away. Like, the only reason they're getting coverage now is because Trump emboldened them.
Right.
Among other things, yeah.
Yeah. Kristi, are you all set to go? Your mic is off, but we're not yet hearing you. At least I'm not. Maybe there'll be a slight delay. Or not. This is what happens when people join late. Okay, so then while you're sorting out your sound, I'm going to kick it over to Tom. And I wanted to get your thoughts and perspectives on it, if you're ready to go.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts, and my perspective is maybe a little bit different because I have, even though you love me, I am old, and my memories of Nazis go back to the stories from World War II that I heard from my my uncle, who is with Patton when they liberated Buchenwald, and Patton and Eisenhower and a fair number of troops, I think, went through the camp and got an eyeful. And Patton or Eisenhower said that the citizens of Weimar, who are, I guess, is the nearest town, should be walked through there and shown what they were. You know, they were seeing trains come in and no trains go out. Or people on trains come in and the trains come out empty all the time. And they all said, "We don't know what happened." Well, maybe some didn't, but most did. Something was going on, and they were complicit. And so that's my uncle, who was very close to Patton. He was his personal cook for a chunk of the war. That was his experience. And my other uncle fought in the very first Ranger Battalion, the initial one, Darby's Rangers, and he fought in North Africa against the Italians and the Nazis, and same in mostly Nazis in Sicily and Italy. And he was scheduled to go into Normandy, but he was on sick call when that happened. So when he came back, we heard stories about that, about the Nazi soldiers, but also the impressions that Nazis were not good people, good soldiers and not good people. But I think what was interesting about that was that the first bunch of soldiers that went through the camps were horrified, and they were very sympathetic to the Jewish prisoners, and and the other prisoners too. But they were sympathetic certainly to the Jewish prisoners. The troops that followed to clean up the camp didn't see the dead people, didn't see the dead prisoners, and knew about some of the atrocities that had happened with some of the released prisoners, especially the communist released prisoners, who had taken revenge on the citizens of the nearby towns. So they had some sympathy for the Germans. So the second wave through of American soldiers was more conflicted about what Nazis were. But another aspect to this was that was just the Nazi. That was just against the German National Socialist Workers' Party people. They were just as prejudiced as everybody else in the country at that time. They didn't like black people for the most. Well, they could either take them or leave them, and they didn't like them. And all the other prejudices were still in place. So after World War II, there was a very strong antipathy towards Nazis, but not so much towards racial minorities or religious or ethnic minorities, things like that. So all during the 60s, with the rise of the Red Scare, the second Red Scare, I heard people talk about, well, maybe we should have made common cause with the Nazis and fought the Russians. So there was that. And then the 60s with all the upheaval about civil rights and everything, and a lot of these conservative soldiers were, they didn't like Nazis, but they didn't like, all the upset coming from black folks. So that's a long, boring part of history, but I think it shows a little bit of what's happening now, which is sort of the uniting of these two strands of history with people who don't remember World War II, don't remember the Nazis, don't remember history, probably haven't studied history beyond, thinking that the Nazi uniforms were sharp and Hitler was maybe got a bad deal. So that's what's scary. And Martin talked about there being this coming together of confluence of people on the right and racists and Nazis and all that stuff. And I think that's right, and I think that's what's dangerous. These people that had been separated, or where you could sort of separate them out, they're all pretty much on the same in the same organizations, or at least in organizations flowing together, and they are willing to do violence. A lot of them are very smart about propaganda, and our American sense of fairness, free speech, two sides to everything, is helping them with that. And that's where I think the thorny discussions of free speech come in. Yes, free speech, but what do you do when something has been settled by history and people want to come back and bring it up again today? I don't know. Anyway.
Well, thanks for that, Tom.
Long, boring history lesson, but I think it's useful to remember that the lessons are not necessarily transferable.
Right, but some of the patterns are still there. I know that Kevin's mic is working because I saw you flash up during Tom's talk. So yeah, Kevin, I don't know if you wanted to speak to, or if you're knowledgeable about hate speech laws in the UK, and whether or not, you know, the UK has no free speech because of these hate laws, free speech hate laws. And then I'll go over to Kristi and hopefully her mic will be working.
Yes, free speech laws are, or the hate speech elements of free speech laws are relatively vaguely worded, which is a little worrying, I suppose. But generally speaking, yeah, they're fine. I don't think hate speech should be protected. Like, Nazis can still have their rallies and shit, but if it goes too far, there are legal recourse. There is legal recourse to stop that kind of thing from spiraling into the things we've seen at Charlottesville and elsewhere in the world. It's not. This isn't an isolated incident, as some people might want to say. This is a pattern of behaviour to be stopped.
Right. Did you want to, while you're talking, add anything about your? We've been sort of talking just a bit about our reactions and what might come next, like what things need to be fixed. That's a big question, so maybe just you know, try to address your reactions to what you're seeing in the U.S. and your thoughts on it from an outside perspective.
This doesn't surprise me. I've seen this coming for a long time, and I don't want to be, you know, plastic I am or how clever I am. This has been the thing that I'm sure has been mentioned, although I haven't heard much of the talk so far with my technical problems. But I'm sure the ironic Nazism of internet peeps has undoubtedly provided a huge amount of cover, because when you've got so much ironic Nazism, even though lots of it isn't actually ironic, but when they've got so much ability of ironic Nazism, how do you define that from what is real actual Nazism? This has been building and growing for quite some time, and it's been coddled and protected by people, not just the ironic far right, but the kind of soft right, and indeed even the centre, who have essentially bought into the idea of the the Antifa and Black Lives Matter are just as bad as actual Nazis. If one good thing does come from Charlottesville, it seemed to me like they've overplayed their hand, and hopefully America, especially middle America, will now wake up and go, actually, yeah, we'd rather not have the Nazis, please. Which sounds like a ridiculous thing that they might react to that way, but it is only a might at this point.
Right. Thanks
I
for
did
that.
just read a thing about the, I think it was the article you sent me, Kristi, about the doxing of white supremacists and like people disavowing them from their families and stuff, like a father publicly saying that this child's not welcome at family gatherings and stuff anymore because of the hateful, awful things that he believes.
Yeah, so there have been some social consequences, and I want to come on to that a bit more, but first I want to get over to Kristi. Let's see if your mic is working. And we still have silence.
Nah.
No.
Actually, on Michael's, oh, sorry, is she there?
No, I don't think she is. For some reason, her mic isn't working tonight. I don't know if she can check her settings and just keep talking. Keep your mic on. And
Oh, right. You know, I was just going to add a little bit of detail to Michael's thing. That was in a paper in, I believe, North Dakota. A guy whose surname, a really odd surname, Preef, and it had two F's and a T at the end, which is a very American misspelling of a surname. But anyway, the father actually wrote a letter to the newspaper after his son was outed. His son was doxed as one of these, frankly, let's call them what they are, fucking white supremacist terrorists from Charlottesville. His father wrote a letter to the local newspaper in some fucking place, wherever they're from, saying that they hadn't had contact with him for like 2 years. And actually, I think quite interestingly, is that he was, the father was saying that his son had slipped into an internet black hole, was what he described it as, of far-right bigotry. And I think that is important, and it speaks to a lot of the stuff that I think everyone in this room has been saying on the internet for a while, that this is a breeding ground for the kind of bigotry we've seen in Charlottesville. And actually, a fantastic example, I don't want to ramble for too long, but a guy called Christopher Cantwell, who some people may have heard of, he's one of the kind of quote-unquote thought leaders of
He was in the Vice video. He was the star of the Vice video, I think.
Yeah. He actually released a video. I think it was a Periscope video, if I recall, from Saturday or Sunday, literally crying because I think he and a lot of other people have got themselves in so deep without really realizing the consequences of this. Because he was saying that, and he said the exact phrase was, to paraphrase him, I know we talk a lot of shit on the internet, but we tried to keep this legal. We didn't want it to go violent. Fires underneath a lot of very, very extreme people. And he was literally crying because there was a warrant out for his arrest in Charlottesville. Once the state of emergency had been declared, people like himself had...
Because there was
the bald chap.
Because there was one guy who was like during that Vice video, there was the guy who got maced and they poured milk on him and stuff. There was that guy. And
Yeah,
when
the bald guy.
Yeah, but he was like walking along. They were saying because they were asking about violence and stuff, and he was like, "Yeah, man, we're prepared to get violent if we need to. We can. It's not that we're non-violent. We will if we have to. So it's not like he wasn't."
Yeah, well, actually, his name even gets. They start when he was pouring milk on his face. People in the crowd start chanting "Heil Cantwell."
Yeah, no, I saw that too. Yeah. Well, and like you said before, the the thing about like ironic Nazism and stuff. I saw someone say, and I think it's quite true, that when you're not inside this internet bubble, this insulated place that we all kind of inhabit, ironic Nazism just looks like Nazism to outside people. So it doesn't. You're not that. I see all these people saying about how it's satirizing the Nazis and it's the whole Kyrgyzstan bullshit. It's a satirical take on the Nazis. So it's the way that we're going to bring them down. It's not. You're just creating a cover for Nazis. Right. That's all you're doing.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to jump back in. Yeah, because I want to bring it, if it's okay, Martin, I wanted to pick up on a point you made earlier. Maybe this will tie in, maybe not. But you can answer the ironic Nazi question. But before we move on to that, I kind of wanted to unpack the social consequences of the events themselves before we disappear into a YouTube self-absorbed kind of thing. And instead of focusing on the negative, maybe I thought what would be interesting is if we went in the same order. So starting with you, Martin. So if you want to answer, you can do a two-parter. What positives or what has surprised you or has stuck out that has given you hope or inspired you or in some ways like made you not feel so bad about all this from what you've seen from other people? So if each of us could kind of speak to that, I think it would be a slightly more positive thing to talk about before we go into ironic Nazism.
Well, I mean, there's a lot in that camp. And there's been people who have been forcing me to think. I've been Black in America for 34 years, but at the same time, my experiences of racism aren't exactly the same as some of my, Black friends, who, if they were listening to this, based on their experiences, would be basically screaming at me saying, you need to go more extreme than you actually are. I think one thing about this is that it brings to the surface things that I've been arguing for a very long time are under the surface. And when I get into a lot of online debates and debates on my blog and different places with people on how bad racism is in the United States, and sometimes when you get in those debates, it seems very theoretical. It can almost seem like, okay, I'm arguing this and the evidence indicates it happens, research indicates it happens. But is it actually happening this way? And you theorize about it, and then you actually see it happen. And then like when Trump made that speech on Saturday, then he came back on Monday, and I was listening to his speech then, and I'm like, well, he said including the Nazis and including. So is he including like Antifa and these other groups, the leftist groups, along with that, and just not saying that in the list that he's giving? Or am I just like thinking stuff up? And then he comes out the next day and basically makes sure that he was talking and basically makes clear that he was talking about both sides. He's just trying to be political and, kind of using politically correct language on Monday, while at the same time giving him an out, just as I suspected. So in a way, I guess two positive things from this would be, one, it's something that we can point to and say, we're right. We were right about this. We've been right about a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about all along. We've been right about, this movement not just being something that's on the outskirts, but something that has gone mainstream. I mean, you have hundreds of people in Charlottesville. You have a lot of people defending them here in the United States. You have the President of the United States. I mean, it hardly gets more prominent than that. The most powerful person in the world, basically trying to defend these people. So this is not just like a small, tiny fringe movement over here. This is something that's larger, and that's something we've been arguing for a long time. Now it's out in the open. Now we can actually get to, dealing with it. The second thing is that uh, people are extremely angry about this. A lot of people are angrier even about it than I am, and kind of making me think that maybe I should be more upset about it than I am, simply because they say, like, some of you guys have said, we remember, the older people a lot of times are saying, we remember Nazi Germany. We know what it was like, and we are not going to go there. And by any means necessary, we're going to stop it. You have talk show hosts, you have people on the right, you have Republican congressmen, um, basically all coming out very strongly against this. So my hope my hope is that this is a movement that's going to be, you have CEOs and so on, going against this, and leaving Trump's advisory boards, so that it actually gets disbanded as of today. Like, my hope is that this movement will grow larger and basically extinguish the alt-right. My suspicion, and so that's like my positive thing, but I have to add to that my suspicion. And, just like I've had suspicions before that have kind of eventually kind of be true, when I look at the facts on the ground and when I look at the statistics, the facts are more white people. If you pull white people in America, they seem to think, the majority seems of people in the United States seem to think that racism against whites is more of a problem than racism against blacks. They're just not out there saying it. So the more they get a license to say it, the more mainstream um, it's seen as, the more they're able to come out of the closet. The more, if Christopher Cantwell, you know, isn't crying, we saw, right, that Kevin Logan was just talking about, and scared that he's going to get arrested, but instead just, marches out with hundreds and he's part of like this mainstream movement, then I think that movement may get larger. It may become more influential, and we'll have to stop it somehow. Like, my suspicion is that this is just the tip of the iceberg, and there's a lot of racism underneath the surface, and racists just waiting to come out. And they thought they could come out now, and so now we're going to have to. And so a lot of us are telling them, no, you have to go back into hiding. But I think a lot of them are still to, really, really.
Sorry, I'm muting Kristi. Yesterday she unmuted herself because she didn't know that I could hear her.
I think a lot of people are, and I know I sound kind of conspiratorial when I say this, and so I'm very self-conscious about that aspect of things. But when I look at the facts on the ground, when I look at how things are developing, when I hear what Trump said, which I couldn't believe what I was hearing yesterday, like, I could believe it from the standpoint of, I've argued that this is the case, but it's one thing to argue it, and it's another thing to see it actually happening. And so when I look at the facts on the ground, I'm thinking, okay, this is just one part of a much larger movement that's just waiting to emerge. And the moment it's given enough permission, the moment it thinks it's safe, then it's going to come out, and we're going to have to figure out how to handle it.
Right.
So there's some optimism, but there's also, I think I can't really mention the optimism without mentioning, like, I'm somewhat pessimistic as well.
Sure.
It was also nice to get a brief thing that's often common when Christiosity is in a chat, being trolled by little people. That's always fun.
I was waiting for it. I was waiting for it.
All right.
Yeah,
so
that was pretty funny.
It wouldn't be the same. It just wouldn't be the same.
Right, so since you are now officially part of the hangout in an audio sense as well as being present, yeah, we're kind of still on first thoughts or, you know, initial reactions. We haven't moved entirely into ironic Nazism yet, or Nazis. So yeah, you can speak to the actual events and your reactions and thoughts on where things have been and how you feel about it.
Yay, Chris.
Well, I am very, very deeply concerned about it. As soon as I saw, I was on Twitter and they, you know, I had heard about this thing that was going on, and I had heard that they were going to be showing up. I heard Richard Spencer had announced it. There was going to be some pushback. So, you know, I was kind of like, well, you know, you don't know what is going to happen. As soon as I saw the torches, them walking around with those goddamn tiki torches, I said, oh, shit. You just, I mean, and I know it looks ridiculous, but on the same, a bunch of guys do not decide to wear matching outfits and wander around with torches for any good reason. It's, you know, something bad is going to come of that. It's not, I'm like, you know, I remember saying, damn, there were no pitchforks available? I mean, what are they doing? And I tweeted out something like, oh, I'm scared. This is going to end really badly. And, you know, of course I had people like, you drama queen, like, no, this is, you can just sort of tell sometimes that something is about to go very badly wrong. And it, you know, it did. I think that there's a lot here to talk about. On Twitter, I'm very concerned, you know, and social media outlets, because I talk to a wide variety of people on Twitter, you know, different people from different political and whatever persuasions, and I think it's getting very ugly out there. I think it's not, it's degenerated in many ways. I remember I put out something like, hey, centrists, let's talk about, you know, some of the things, like, let's talk about why Nazis and Antifa are different, you know, from an idea perspective. And, you know, I just got deluged by people who were just like, you evil, horrible, whore, cunt, bit, you know, as if I had said the most terrible thing anybody had ever heard in their lives. So it was like, oh, okay, so people are not wanting to talk right now. Okay. So it's, I find it a little scary. I find all of it a little scary. I find it terribly sad that young lady lost her life, and, you know, I watched her mother. I think it's kind of heartbreaking. I've watched a lot of the things that have come out. The Vice did a really good piece on it. So I'm really, I feel for the people of Charlottesville very much. So yeah, I mean, I guess those are sort of my first reactions. Also, there was frustration, there was anger. Anger at feeling like we've been warning that this is coming for a while and have not been listened to. And, you know, I don't want to focus on me. I don't want to focus on, you know, I'm really pissed off now that you people didn't listen to me. You know, it feels very self-indulgent to have that feeling. but you still have it. You're still angry. You know what I mean? Does any of that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So,
All right.
all right. So one of the things that we've been talking about, and maybe because we've been going for 45 minutes, and I don't want, Michael has to leave probably in the next 15 to 20, but we should maybe talk about this, and it ties into the problem with centrism, this the idea that you can do ironic Nazism, that you can somehow annoy Nazis by appropriating their symbols and spreading them around, making them normalized. Yeah, and so for people in the chat, I don't know if you came in early, but I did put some links up in the description box already. So if you refresh the page, you should not get much of a lag. And you'll see that one of them is called The End of Ironic Nazism. It features the guy Baked Alaska, I believe is the one. He's also, there's another guy, somebody Matt, Millennial Matt, but I don't want to say it wrong if that's not it, but it's Matt guy. And how they're ironic Nazis online, and they promote these things, and they went to the rally and they had a very bad experience. And people want, I'll just say this now and I'll get it out, and then I'll let other people talk. I had an exchange on Twitter with somebody who was saying, look, people, so let's take the Kekistani flag. That was the picture that was taken at VidCon with a whole bunch of people behind the Kekistani flag because they're shitlords. And if you go to look, there are pictures, maybe I'll have to put links to them now in the description box below. People at the rally in Charlottesville were wearing Kekistani flags, right? So the whole point of Nazis is that they are afraid of being outed. We are seeing what happens. They forgot, people haven't had to, people didn't wear masks because they were afraid to come out in public. And then these mostly young men, or older men too, to be honest, white guys, they live online, they talk shit all the time. They are as outrageous as they want to be, almost. In some forums, they're completely, free speech zones, and they can say outrageous things. When they come into the real world, when they come into meat space, then the consequences of their actions are now being met with them. And so there's an important part of what's happened since with the doxing that we want to talk about. But of course, what enables that feeling of safety is being a member of a group, of not being the only one with a Kekistani flag. So the guy who got the Kekistani flag, the Kekistani flag is a tattoo, that picture that circulated on Twitter. I hope he wasn't thinking that was going to be ironic, because right now there are pictures circulating on the internet with Kekistani flags being held by people doing the Hitler salute. And that's a tattoo you have now. That's normalizing, right? Because his friends are going to go, well, he's not a racist, right? So it's okay if people have their Kekistani flags out. And if he's just saying things to be provocative, he doesn't really mean it. He's just doing it to trigger people. Well, you can't tell the difference between that and somebody who's actually a Nazi who's saying those things to be hurtful because they want to drive you out of the country. From the person hearing it, they don't know you're being ironic. That's the bubble you live in. So yeah, this has been perpetuated online, it's been promoted online, and we're seeing the fruits of it come up now. People who don't realize that they are doing the Nazis' work for them by promoting these things, by making it normal to try to trigger SJWs, by saying horrible things to them, and by harassing people. That's the Nazis' tactics, is to drive people out with first intimidation and then violence, and also be able to get away with it. So yeah, it happens online, it's normalized here, and what we're seeing in what happened over the weekend and the attack, because these people have so much rage because they've dehumanized people they hate so much, is the terrorist attack that it has led to. And so so you can draw a line from promoting the Kekistani flag on Sargon's channel to the normalization of it, to the use of it to promote violence and intimidation, to violence. I'm not saying they caused the violence. I'm saying there's a thread here you can follow. So, okay, I'll turn off my mic now.
So, go ahead, Mom.
Just real quick. This seems to me exactly what happened. I mean, to a major extent, what happened in.
Just so you know, Martin, your mic is a bit muted, so maybe just check if you've got something between your. Yeah, great, thanks.
Oh, can you hear me now?
So much better.
Okay, so this seems a lot to me like a little bit like Nazi Germany, because a lot of them so there was a group that I went into, right? And I made this post, and I said, you guys realize, because it's an anti-SJW group, I said, over the past few days, as I've been experimenting, looking at the comments and so on, like, you guys have basically been very heartless. Every notion of empathy that I've encouraged, through through the death of Heather, through the people that got ran over cruelly by that car, has been basically mocked. You guys have said, they should kill more people, that type of deal. You realize what you're encouraging is the end point of this, the end point of all this encouragement is, people die and you don't care. And I basically showed them like a clip from, a dramatization of the soldiers walking in on the Holocaust. And I was like, this is what you're encouraging. And the response to that was the Holocaust didn't happen. It's not just so it's basically a whole bunch of Holocaust deniers, and it seems like that's the same exact thing that there's okay, we're just joking, we're just playing around here. This is just trigger this person. It's not really a big deal, but there's actually very real damage being done, and so there needs to be something that happens to get people to stop laughing and show them, this is actually serious, what's going on. And, it seems to be partially happening.
If you're creating that environment, if you're creating that environment, if you're harboring an environment like that, like the audience of Sargon or something like that, where people who espouse those ideas are welcome, whether it be ironic or not, you're creating an environment where that sort of stuff can fester and can, whether you like it or not, the ironic people who do the stuff ironically and the people who do it unironically, there's going to be crossover there. People are going to change their ideas and whatnot because of the people they are, if you spend a lot of time with people espousing deplorable Nazi ideas, whether they're ironic or not, then it's going to have an effect on you. And so having that sort of quote unquote safe space, this is basically what it is, where you can go and spew Nazi ideas, it's not going to end well. It's not. And that's the normalization part. Then, like I was just going to say, as well as the people defending those kind of things by saying, oh, you just call everyone that disagrees with you a Nazi, and then but that gets spread across entire scales of people, from people who are actually Nazis and we're calling them Nazis because they are Nazis, to the ironic Nazis or whatever. But the creation of this defense bubble that allows the Nazis to actually do their shit, and
Yeah, I was just going to add in, as by way of backing up what Martin was saying about what is being the road that's being travelled, unfortunately, by America at the moment. A quote that sums it up perfectly from a guy called Andrew Anglin, who is, for those who don't know, is the head honcho at the Daily Stormer, the neo-Nazi far right. I mean, just the actual fucking Nazis. I mean, literally, they are the inheritors of that heritage. And his quote was, and this was said before the events of Saturday, and indeed even before the events of Friday, the Tiki Torch March. He said, it starts with Charlottesville and ends at Auschwitz. Now, he wasn't saying that as a warning. He was saying that as an advertisement. Let that sink in for a second, America.
Was he the one who also said the stuff about guys like Sargon and Chris Ray Gunn and Milo and whatnot being useful idiots?
No, that was Richard Spencer.
That was Richard Spencer. Okay, but again,
but he was the guy. But he was the guy who slut shamed Heather Heyer, the dead woman.
Oh yeah, I read that. I was like, "Fuck you."
Yeah. So
well, it's interesting that GoDaddy, the organisation which were hosting the server for the Daily Stormer, it took that for them to shut it down. Like all the Holocaust stuff, all the let's go around killing blacks and Jews, that was fine. Apparently, it took a fucking terrorist murder for them to go, actually, you know what? Let's not host these people.
Bit too far.
So, Michael, do you have to get going here? Because I also Danny hasn't spoken for a while, and not everyone has to speak and everything, but I just don't want it to become too much of a cross conversation. And then also, well, Tom's AFK, so he wouldn't want to go. But yeah, Michael, what do you have? Like 5 minutes, 10 minutes? What do you got left?
Yeah, the bell will be going in like 4 minutes, so I'll have to go then. But
oh, it's sad.
What's that? Yeah, no, it was really cool hanging out with you guys again. It's been, sorry I've been so out of the loop. I want to get I get back to New Zealand in about a month, and I'll be able to. I'm there for about 2 months, and about 2 weeks, and then I'll be going on another cruise ship. So, but I'll attempt to do some stuff between now and then. Yeah,
Have fun.
I will. I'll try my best.
Excellent. Yes, we miss having you around, but it's lovely when you can join us like this.
Yeah, baby. Good. Thanks for having me.
Okay, yeah. So, Danny, your thoughts then? If Tom, what we were saying is, you don't have to have an opinion on a topic, but we want to give you at least a chance. Bye.
See y'all again soon. Bye.
Okay, so regarding that, what we were talking about with the whole Richard Spencer using Sargon as jumping off point for the Nazis, like I actually think that people like that, like those centrists who are like, well, maybe we should hear both sides of the argument, are actually sometimes can actually be far more dangerous. Because eventually people like them could lead to people like Rage After Storm happening. And we need less racists being like basically these centrists who are like, maybe we should hear both sides of the argument. Like if these same centrists were back in the early 1800s, they would have been the same people who were making the claim that slavery is a necessary evil.
Yeah. So I'll go with Tom, and then of course Kristi, and then we'll start the circuit again, or we can just maybe have more of a free-for-all conversation. But I just want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to speak. So, Tom, did you have anything you wanted to add on that part of it, the ironic Nazis?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. First, the
you know what? Your sound is gone, Tom. Sorry, your sound has gone off again. Did you drop out and come back in? Because it seems to have. Okay.
Can you hear me at all?
Well, your sound is not that great. So maybe if you could check your settings, I'll kick it over to Kristi. If you can just kind of maybe try your setting, change them and save them again, then we'll come back to you. So, all right. Kristi, on ironic Nazism?
Yeah, there's a lot to say here, I think. So one thing is the question of satire. Satire is great, but it has to be done well. Like, you can't just turn something from red to green, call it a satire. A satire of what? Ironically, what is the ironic statement you're trying to make? We're and when you ask that, when you try to drill down, they say, well, you're satirizing the ideology. You're trying to troll them. What is that? That's nothing. That's, and obviously they don't care. I mean, Richard Spencer, who's a very intelligent person, understand that we're talking about like a Duke University PhD grad, contender who ended up, going out because he wanted to be a Nazi more than he wanted to have a PhD from Duke. He's not a stupid person. So some of the things he says is, these guys, these edgelords, these shitlords, they're playing footsies with us because we're what gives them their edge. They don't have their own edge. They need us. And so that's when you start having this sort of back and forth and lines start to get blurred. You can't have someone like Sargon, Sargon is not a centrist any more than I am. Sargon is a misogynist. He's a hateful person. He is a bully. He is a lot of really bad things. The fact that he can sit in a chair and speak very, with his lovely voice and his lovely accent and say pretty heinous stuff and do pretty heinous stuff, that doesn't make him a centrist because he speaks about it calmly. Sometimes, when he's not banging on tables or whatever he does sometimes. You know, nobody who sort of suggests that maybe Elliot Rodgers was all feminists' fault is a centrist. That's not a centrist position. So if you're a man and you're a white dude, you're into white dude identity politics, which is what a lot of them are into. You're an anti-feminist, you're a misogynist, you have all of these ideological things that are very similar, very much right on the line with Nazis, right? The Daily Stormer and the average Sargon person has overlap to start with, right? You can't just decide to...
Oh, wait, she's back. Okay,
Hello?
never mind. Yeah, you cut out for a bit. But now you're back.
Where did I cut?
Yeah, I know. Oh, sorry. I assumed everyone. I assumed she'd stop speaking. Sorry. Go on, Kristi.
What did I say? What was the last thing people heard? Am I
We
not
got distracted. No. We got distracted because you dropped out of the room, and then we started talking about you not being there. So I remember you were talking about, oh gosh, Spencer, and he was educated, and where did you go after that? I don't know. I know it was a little bit after that, but that's what I'm recalling. Anyone else got anything closer in time? Maybe just pick
I'm
up where
sorry.
you're at.
I have been rambling on, having no idea that I was out of the... I'm good.
I'm sorry.
I'm really good. No, that's cool.
I think
Talking about Sargon, a person like Sargon is a white male identity politics person, a misogynist, he's somebody who has overlap ideologically, not a centrist. Somebody is giving feedback, I don't know, but he's not a centrist at all. And he has some overlap with the Richard Spencers of the world because they have some very similar ideas about things like women and domestic violence. They have similar ideas about certain of these identity politics things, about certain ways that they'd like to see them done. So the idea that you're just going to ironically start borrowing their iconography without making any particular point about it, without satirizing it in any particular way, like what is the point of changing a flag from red to green? That is a satire because, you know, the point you made is like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So the idea you could just take that and do that, and then that's fine, and that's all you need to do, is ridiculous. It's just absurd.
Yeah, I was just going to say you can't ironically claim parts of it and unironically claim other parts of it. You can't rant about cultural Marxism and communism all the time and then ironically take another bit as if that people aren't going to make the connection that you're unironically taking that bit as well. You can't pick and choose like that.
It doesn't make sense. Like and that's why you have all these overlaps. That's why all of a sudden you have people who are sort of quasi part of your group, the Lauren Southerns, who are, you know, riding off to shoot at boats, at Doctors with Borders boats coming in. You know, I mean, that is a bizarre, crazy shit that your group is sort of producing, these YouTubers and people who are sort of on the line, and then you realize they make a video that is way past the line, you know? And you can't just say that. You can't just say it's okay. You can't just say I'm ironically a white supremacist, but don't call me a white supremacist, but I'm going to go hang out with Edgy Sphinx over here. and then I'm going to endorse and support this person who shoots at Doctors with Borders boats, and like it doesn't work that way.
But it's even more serious than that. It's not just them hanging out with people like Edgy Sphinx, although it makes very much the same point. But they endorse candidates like Geert Wilders and Marine Le Pen, who are both openly far right political candidates running for the highest office in their lands.
Like,
I mean, it's ridiculous.
It just seems to me like you are basically doing the same. Like when Heather, the Heather who was killed by her boyfriend, unfortunately, but like a while ago, when Thunderfoot made that video about how he was getting off the skeptic ship or whatever because somebody said a feminist got triggered, people were laughing and making jokes about that. Like, that is when you're talking about triggering people, right? And the whole like quote unquote skeptic or anti-SJW community basically went on the side of Sargon Akkad and saying, yeah, that's fine. Like you can laugh at that or protecting that. Like, yeah, you can making a joke like a feminist got triggered is that's perfectly acceptable. I don't know why Thunderfoot's making a big deal about that. That's literally like what I don't understand about this whole deal is how people don't see, how that side doesn't see that when you go out to try to piss somebody off or upset somebody or depress them or hurt them, even to the point of fatally hurting them, and think that it's a joke, you're actually doing that thing. Like you're actually standing behind the violence and encouraging it, regardless of what rhetoric you're using to do that. And so I think that in Nazi Germany, I mean, my understanding is that a lot of the German citizens didn't exactly know that the Holocaust was happening. And a lot of people now, a lot of, the anti-SJWs now are denying that it ever happened. Because that is the end point. That is what they're working towards. That is what that is what they're protecting with their okay, we have to be as mean to these people as possible. With whatever rhetoric or we have to be mean and rude to these people, and we'll protect it with oh, we don't really mean that, or oh, these beliefs aren't really all that dangerous, when they clearly are dangerous. Like I don't understand how I don't understand how you can laugh at a car that is going into a group of protesters and going into a group of about 15 to 19 protesters and kills one of them. And you can look at this happening very intentionally. You can look at people crying. You can look at people needing critical medical attention. You can look at somebody who's dead, who was who had a beautiful heart, who actually really went out to try to help her community and help those in need. You can look at that and laugh and think that's a joke and talk about how more people should be run over. Like, what is the bottom? Like, you're actually encouraging people to get killed and thinking that the awesome thing about these people dying is that they got quote unquote triggered or that they got upset. Like, this is, I don't understand, I guess, what I'm trying to say, and it's hard to articulate this because it's such a major hypocrisy, it's such a major contradiction that I don't even know how people are able to connect it in their own minds. But saying, oh, we were just trying to upset this person is not an excuse. Like, how does that make it okay? How does that not make it worse? we should not. We should be rather trying to help each other, as opposed to, thinking that it's a joke just to try um, to try to hurt people. And there seems to be no bottom to this whole excuse of, oh, we're just trying to hurt this person, all the way up to death, all the way up to killing people, all the way up to sending people into critical care, all the way up to, making parents lose their daughter. Um, it doesn't seem like it doesn't matter how severe the tragedy is. It seems like these people, these anti-SJWs, and that's why Thunderfoot got off the bus basically when he saw this with Heather. He's like, it's like, it doesn't matter how bad it is. We were just trying to piss you off. We were just trying to make you upset. We were just trying to ruin your life, is a valid excuse. And I think I don't know exactly how it's going to happen, but somehow, and I think some people are getting the message, but I think it needs to be repeated over and over, the message that you thinking that's a valid excuse is outrageous, and this is actually a very serious moment. And imparting to them the seriousness of the moment, I think, is a major concern. I don't know. It just makes me really angry that somebody says, "Oh, we hurt this person," and they think that that's it. "Oh, we hurt this person, ha ha ha!" Like, "Oh, we just went in here to hurt somebody with the words that we said, or the things that we did, or the car that we ran over on them," and somehow you're supposed to get over it because we were just trying to hurt you, and you're not supposed to try to, respond to us back in a serious way. Like, how does that? I don't understand the logic, but the fact that some people do think that that's airtight logic is very upsetting to me. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, thank you. That's very well said. Just also, before anyone comes in, I want to make a point of clarification, because I know we mentioned Sargon by name, and just I didn't want to interrupt your flow, so I wanted to make this point before we moved on, that the person who said a feminist got triggered, I believe was V, who was the host of the channel. If that's wrong, someone can correct me in the comments, but I don't want people saying that we accuse Sargon of that, just by conflation. I wanted to make
Well,
that.
yeah, I mean, even if it was V who said that, like, I
It's
heard
still the mentality.
forth, like, the mentality was that it seemed to be an okay joke. Like, even in the context of that whole entire discussion, there seemed to be laughter at that kind of joke, and not really the really strong, like, pushback that is
Exactly. Yeah. He
situation
stayed in that.
that's
Sorry,
appropriate in the situation. You're joking about somebody dying in that manner, like that. And I don't think this is, I mean, I'm talking about Sargon of Akkad, but I don't think that this is just like, I'm not Sargon of Akkad has hundreds of thousands of followers, right? He gets hundreds of thousands of views on this video. I don't give a shit about, I don't really care about Sargon of Akkad in particular. It's these hundreds of thousands of people who, even before, I haven't heard Sargon of Akkad's opinion on this whole last thing that happened, but even without hearing from Sargon of Akkad, I've heard from a lot of anti-SJWs who are absolutely beside themselves with glee that this person, that these people got ran over. Not all of them, but the vast majority that I've heard from anyway, of, like, the rank and file. And so it's just like, this whole triggered meme has got to stop somehow. Like, hurting people's feelings. I went out there to hurt, like, saying I went out there to hurt this person's feelings is not ever a valid excuse for hurting somebody's feelings.
Right. So I know that Kristi had her mic off, so I know she wants to say something. We also have to test Tom's mic again. So Kristi, are you okay if I throw it back to Tom just because he was waiting, and then go to you and then to Kevin?
Absolutely.
All right. So Tom, let's hear your sound.
Okay. Any better?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
Some crap. Okay. Oh damn! Now I gotta talk. so much going on, so much in my head. One of the things that we've been talking about just now, about the way of thinking, the way of dealing with other people's lives and feelings and experiences with. Well, I think it goes to that facts over feels business, which makes it like, well, if it's feelings, it's not important. And if you're triggered, that's your feels, and we're facts here. We gotta do the fact thing, and the fact thing is serendipitously for them the right wing crap that they believe in. That's right, and that has spread through the culture, beyond YouTube, beyond the internet. People, just conservatives all over the place talk about triggering liberals, and they need their safe spaces. They can't deal with reality. They can't take a joke. They can't toughen up. And then and that leads to this kind of crap where, somebody dies, people are mowed over with a car, and the response of some people, a fair number of people, I'm afraid, is, well, let's have laws that allow people to run over protesters who block the streets. No human empathy, none of that. And that's where I think, those of us who may be called SJWs, we're right, but, and we're right about the whole business about people's experiences are important. People can't be expected to just suck it up and live with oppression. And we're focused now. There's this whole group that has coalesced around Nazism, right-wing talking points, the alt-right, a lot of the regular right, and they have a leader and a spokesman in Trump, and that empowers the centrists who think, well, there's both sides here, and why can't these people sort of get with the program and not be so triggered, and why don't they understand white people's problems? All that fucking bullshit is now central to the politics of a lot of people in this country. And one of the things that I think Martin and other folks have made the point that this is sort of come to a crisis point. And it's come to a crisis point with all that right-wing stuff, all in the package, and all of the fields, the SJW stuff, and the left anti-fascist, and the left liberal, hey, we got to deal with people's oppressions, coming together in two camps. And I think this is a crisis time for our country. If we go one way, where Sinclair Lewis said it can't, wrote a book about it, can't happen here, with it happening here. If it goes that way, it will happen here. We will have a dictatorship of fascists. So this is a crisis point, I think, for our country, and I may be overplaying it, I may be being dramatic, but I don't really think so. I think with Trump being elected, and now Trump being front and center on that, taking a side here, we're looking at some tough times. And the ironic Nazis and the Kekastanis and the 4chan people playing it for laughs, they're going to have to pick a side, and I think most of them already have, and it's distressing that they picked the wrong one.
Thanks, Tom. Curiosity, are you all set to go?
Yeah. And Tom, I think that was great point. So I am perfectly happy if people are going to make really smart points like that, to wait. So I just, and going back to what Martin said about this sort of casual cruelty, everyday sadism as the idea of it, you know, I feel like it's a sort of, it's part of the authoritarian mindset, and I know that they prefer to call other people authoritarians, but it's very much part of the psychology, you know, this hatred of weakness, this despising people who aren't tough enough, who can't, you know, who can't take it. Like, you should be able to take this casual cruelty of people just sort of en masse showing up to be harmful to you for no good reason. That's just something you should be able to tolerate and be tough and roll with, and if you can't, there's something wrong with you about it. That's sort of, you know, when they talk to Nazis, you know, and I'm not saying that most of the people who are, again, I'm trying very hard to draw lines, because I know that there are lines here, right? Not every single anti-SJW is anywhere near to what a Nazi is or would be, but there is a line there where there's a similarity, right? And one of the similarities is despising weakness, right? So you get these people and their sort of attitudes, and then you get centrists who are looking at Antifa, and they're looking at the Nazis. They're looking at white nationalists, and they're seeing similar behaviors, so they conflate the two of them. Or they're looking at SJWs who pay attention to identity politics, and then they look at Richard Spencer, who calls himself an identitarian, and they conflate them, and they're not paying attention to some really important distinctions here. You know, the important distinction between an identitarian who wants to enforce identity politics permanently, who basically, whiteness is not a social construct to Richard Spencer. It is practically a holy state of being to him, and he wants that to be the state of all people who live, you know, in his ethno-state. They should all be white, and they should only date white people and talk to white people because white people are this special group, you know, and they have to protect and defend them. And these sort of rule and sort of genders and sexualities, all these things have to be policed in his ethno-state. They're not, you can't just decide, you know, I'm a woman, but I'm going to go and be a head of state in Richard Spencer's mindset, right? Because that's not allowed. That's a terrible thing. And the difference between that and someone who is, you know, on the social justice side, who's looking at identity, how identities play out in our society today, and looking at racism and looking at sexism and looking at these gender problems, because they're problems that they want to fix so that we can move beyond them, right? It's completely different goals are in mind here. 180. And yet they see, well, this person talks about black people and white people, and this person talks about black people and white people, therefore they're the same. It's nuts. And I don't, you know, I try to get through, and I don't know how to get past that. And it's similar with Antifa, and I know that, you know, Antifa is a very complicated organization, and not everything that they've ever done or ever will do is going to be correct and right. And I'm not saying that if they go around doing bad things that that's all right, but they are a reaction to fascism. And fascism is Fascism is all about celebrating violence, celebrating harm to people. It is not, it is an inherently violent kind of way of looking at the world. You've got to be a conqueror, you've got to be the tough one, you've got to be warlike. That's what they value, that's what they believe in. So there's no such thing as a fascist state or Nazi state that doesn't end in violence. It's just, it would be like a capitalist state with no money. It doesn't make sense. Okay, so that's what I gotta say.
That was really good. Thank you. So I've got Kevin, and then I think Danny wants to speak because I saw him turn his mic off. And then I want to ask you guys in the last round, and then we'll wrap it up, about whether, basically, what can be done in the YouTube community. Will people tolerate Nazis in their comment section and their chats? So that would be the next question. But first, Kevin, and then Danny, and then I think everyone has had a chance to. Oop, I think I've got Kristi on lock. Okay, sorry about that. Then I think everyone's had a chance to speak on the topic. So to you, Kevin.
Right. Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I just something that popped into my head as Kristi was speaking, something that she said at the start of what she said about their non-tolerance of weakness. And it's interesting that that's I mean, that's of course true, but their definition of weakness is really just profoundly wrong. Their version of what strength and weakness are, both in terms of moral character and what makes a society and all that, is just fucking wrong. I mean, look at the fact that they've thrown their weight behind Donald Trump, who's one of the most thin-skinned, easily offended, butthurt individuals ever. And they're very much the same. They dominate American society, white people in general, and yet they go around chanting "White Lives Matter" as if everything about American society doesn't already show that. They're just so unbelievably fragile and easily offended and upset, but yet want you to be able to take them laughing at your dead friends. It's ridiculous.
Right.
I'm
Okay.
done.
So Danny, how about you?
Okay, yeah, like I'm focusing on that whole lack of empathy and hatred of weakness. Like, I really don't like their hatred of weakness either. Like with the whole claim, like, oh, if you can't handle this, get off the internet. Like, that's something I don't like. And also, back to the lack of empathy topic. Like, I actually saw that the Nazis want to protest Heather's funeral. Like seriously, that's pretty much how bad these people, and that's how morally bankrupt these people really are. Like, not only did they kill the person, not only did they kill someone who was protesting them, but now they want to protest her funeral. Wait, did I just get muted or?
No.
Oh,
nope.
Okay. But like I was saying, like, to show how much there's really a lack of empathy that's taking place right now. Like, they want to protest the funeral of the person they killed.
Yeah, that's really horrible. So turning now to, maybe a more constructive way of thinking about moving forward.
Can I say something real quick?
Of course. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just gonna slightly. I don't think that they are concerned about making sure that. I don't think it's so much about them protecting strength as a concept. I think that, like what you guys have been saying, like their definition of strength and weakness is so warped. I think that it's about protecting privilege. I think it's about protecting their sense of power. Because if you look at their definitions of what strength is, I mean, at least from what they admire on YouTube, are all the things that give them additional power, right? Strength is, keeping on your ratings. Strength is not deleting their YouTube comments. Strength is engaging in discourse, but engaging in discourse on the platforms that they decide to choose. Strength in so many different aspects of it just happens to coincide with all the things that give them more power. And then when it goes on the flip side, when it's somebody attacking Donald Trump, all of a sudden who is, as Kevin Logan just said, one of the thinnest skinned people in the United States, let alone who's ever been president, it's all about protecting him, because the threat to him is this threat to their sense of privilege. So I guess what I would focus on is, I mean, and from my perspective, it's not so much that they're trying to, and so a lot of the glee and a lot of the laughing and so on, that they say, oh, these people are so weak, it's just rubbing in, or just their sense of values being governed by how well their privilege is protected. So I just want to make that. I mean, from my perspective, I guess I kind of see that, kind of see it as more about protecting their sense of privilege, their sense of power, than about just protecting strength, or weakness as a concept per se.
While you were talking, Martin, what I thought about was people who do brag that they keep their comments open. But the thing is that not all the comments are directed at them. When you leave your comments completely unmoderated, then people, you're going to let anything go in the comment section, and people are talking to each other. So you're creating an environment where that kind of stuff is, it's allowed, so people can get away with it. And once they know they can get away with it, then there's no holds barred, right? And that kind of creates its own environment that has nothing to do with the person who created the channel, because they might not be reading all of the conversations going on under their own videos. If you go back, I don't read all the comments that come up from months old videos. There's just too many of them. So yeah, it's not always about the person, it's about the people on that platform in that space. So right, so I think if people don't mind, then I'll shift the topic and go back to, I kind of set it up before this. I've been in the comment section of live chats on anti-feminist channels, and there are just people being Nazis in the comment section. And earlier today, I found a picture that had circulated a while ago when Lacey Green and Chris Ray Gun were on a chat, and someone paid to have, I don't know, one of them, a Pepe Frog image, paid to say praise Keck. The issue is, if you know that there are people, if there are people being openly or promoting Nazism in your live chats and in your comment section, I think there's a good question now for YouTube creators. What are you going to do about it? And I don't know if anybody wants to pick up that thread or maybe take it in a slightly different direction. Anyone who turns off their mic first will get to go first. And nobody's being okay. Danny's gone.
Okay. Personally, I think that, like, if Nazis or so appear in my comments, like, oh, preserve the white race and blah blah blah, like, I'm going to delete the comments, because I don't want that type of anti-Semitism and racism in my videos, because I don't want that type of stuff there, because it's unproductive.
Right. But on the issue of, like, super chats, things like that, where people are reading the comments out or doing hangouts where they basically interact with the chat,
I think super chat is a terrible idea, because, like, after that whole Lacey Green and Chris Ray Gun thing, I'm seriously starting to get the feeling, like, this is a bit off topic, but I'm seriously starting to get the feeling that Lacey only will only do hangouts with people who who will possibly pay her or something. Like,
okay, anyone else want to comment on the responsibility of creators in these chat situations?
Apologies.
Well, I've got no problem with super chat per se, but as with everything, it's incumbent upon the person who has the microphone to do the right thing. And so if someone comes in and posts, say, praise Keck, you don't have to actually say that. You can just say, no, go fuck yourself. That seems to me, and I know she didn't actually say praise Keck, but I think she sort of laughed it off. And we're now in a situation where I don't think humanity can afford to laugh it off much longer.
Anyone else on that? I really found a bum topic, huh? I thought maybe Kristiosity might have
I
something.
kind of wanted to go in a different direction. One of the things that I hear a lot is that SJWs have sort of caused some of this to happen because, you know, you call someone a Nazi and then I guess there's no choice, they have to become one. Or I'm being flippant, but the idea is that social justice has sort of pushed people into this position. And I think that dovetails perfectly with what Martin was saying, that this isn't, you know, if I'm supposed to accept all of this horrible things that are said to me all the time, or else just get off the internet, and that's acceptable. I've never quite understood why people are so quick to say, well, this person was called a racist. That's terrible. You can't blame them now for being a racist. Like, it doesn't make any sense at all to me. But from the sense of protecting privilege, I guess it really does. You know, it's white people or cis people or what have you are feeling like minorities or marginalized people, sort of talking about their real problems, which are far beyond being called names, let's be honest, in a way that's causing them discomfort or upset or what have you, and they don't like it. And they're feeling like their privilege is being assaulted, which it is. You know, I mean, not their rights, not their state of being, but their privileged status, their status as the norm, their status as Doctor Who's and, you know, Ghostbusters and whatnot. That sort of, again, I know I'm being flippant, but that's the sort of thing that they're talking about. And I know one thing that I feel for my own personal responsibility, I do think that I have made some mistakes in dealing with centrists. I think that I have been quick to anger. I think I've been very quick to say, oh, you know what, piss off. Just screw you. I don't even want to talk to you. I'm sick of this crap. I'm sick of your nonsense. I don't want to hear it, and go to hell. You know, and that, I think, is an abdication for me. I think it was a mistake. I think that even if I was, in some of these cases, definitely within my rights to be angry or upset or hurt or whatever, you know, I should have looked at myself as being in a different position now and needing to go a little bit of the extra mile and reach out, because there are there who aren't, sometimes I don't know what they're thinking, but they are not badly intentioned. They certainly don't want to be Nazis. They're confused about all the shit that's going on. A lot of the centrists I've found are angry at everybody. They're just pissed. And they're pissed because it seems to them that all these groups are causing all these problems, you know, and they're not appreciating that social justice did not just cause this problem 3 years ago with political correctness. You know, it didn't just show up on a campus, you know, a few years back, and then the whole world went to crazy. This has been an ongoing problem, an ongoing battle for for generations, to be honest with you. And it's continuing, and it's not fixed yet. And until we fix it, it's gonna keep biting us in the ass. That's just it. It doesn't, that's just the way it works, you know. People don't accept being subjugated easily. So they will fight back, and then you will feel, if you're the person who's not being subjugated, if you're the one on top, you're going to feel a little threatened. And we're going to go around and around and around in this circle again and again until we just address it and move on it. And can you hear the kids? I'm sorry. So that's me.
Sorry, I had myself muted. No, that's fine. No worries. All right. So I think we've been going not quite for 2 hours. Are there topics that people wanted to bring up in the chat, or not in the chat, in the talk here in the Hangout that we haven't had a chance to address yet?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tom.
I just thinking about positive things and what we can do. I think, especially since the election of, I was going to say Reagan because I hate him too, but this last orange baboon and all the crap that came out of that, I think the infrastructure has been built for our side, and it's there. And that's, I think, one of the good things, that we can use it. There are lots of groups out there who are working on individual parts of this. And there are groups that sort of pull a lot of that together into one place. There are petition sites, and there are sites that tell you that there's a march coming up, or there's a politician that's having a town hall, or there's some legislation that is in the process of needing, of doing their required public hearing time, and they tell you what that period is and what you should do and who you have to contact. So I think a lot of the response that we can make, or that we have to make, is probably already, the infrastructure is already there to do that. And it's there, I think to some, maybe to a great extent on the other side as well. But what I was saying earlier about it's all coming together to a head into two big, seeming like there's two sides now that are getting pretty well defined, and there's going to be a fight. And we have, I think, probably a majority of people who, in this country at least, who are decent people and are going to wind up on the right side. And we have some tools now to do that with. I don't have a YouTube channel. I think about it, and then I think God, who wants to hear me? But no. The point aside, I don't have anything really much to add there about comments and direction and subject, but there's that. I guess that's it.
Right. Yeah, I saw on Twitter, Indivisible shared a picture of, they claimed 635 events in support of the protesters and again, not specifically against Nazis, but yeah, I guess in a lot of ways, it wasn't sort of the main focus of it, was more a solidarity rally or rallies. And those kind of networks that have come up through the resistance, where people have a way to channel that and come together and connect and maybe meet people in their own towns and create networks that they can draw upon in the future. Maybe, Heather's Facebook post, I think she said, if you're not outreached, you're not paying attention. And I think that she would be pleased. I didn't know her, but at least that is the kind that it's in her spirit. That kind of stuff is in her spirit. And the more that we do that, and the more that we connect and we do resist.
Kristi, where'd you go?
Wow, I've never dropped out of my own hangout before.
Hello?
Yeah, sorry.
Kristi disappeared. Why are there two Kristis now?
Oh, that's weird. Well, anyway, that was my little speech. So if anybody else had any closing thoughts, this would be the time to make them.
Yeah, just fuck Nazis. That's all I got.
my closing thoughts. When it comes to institutionalized oppression, there is no in between or grayscale to any of it. And also, yeah, fuck Nazis. Richard Spencer deserves to get punched in the face, and I actually thought the memes surrounding Baked Alaska were pretty funny. Like with the whole
Danny's being an edgelord.
Sorry about that.
Anyone else?
I think that we should try talking to each other more, and I think that if we do talk to each other more, we will find that there are more people out there who just need some guidance and who just need to understand some of these ideas better. It may not be many of them, but I think it's worth the effort. That's where I'm at right now personally, and so give me 2 weeks and I'll probably hate everyone again, but you know.
All right. Yeah, go ahead, Martin.
The difficult thing about this for me is that so many people seem to be in such different places, and you know, I've heard from a lot of people who are upset with even like my personal preference is to educate. Like I see the violence that a lot of people are encouraging as like a nuclear option. Like I don't want. I prefer us to settle this through discourse, but I'm not sure how possible that is. And a lot of other people have been very hurt. They have seen things from a profoundly different perspective, and being in even more marginalized positions than I have being in, they see the necessity. They see for themselves the necessity of being a lot more militant. So I guess um, I think that based on your experience, based on what you studied and looked at, I'd encourage people to um, be informed as much as they possibly can be. So if you've been in a marginalized position for a long time and you feel that you have enough information to go on, then I respect your position. But I think that if somebody wants to, at this point, I mean, the difficult thing about this is we're not sure exactly where this is going to go. I'm not sure if this is going to blow up and get larger, or if this is a smaller movement that's going to be extinguished. And people have very strong opinions on both sides. But from your particular vantage point where you are, I would say do what works for you. If you need to take some time out, you know, spend time with your kids, your family, you know, whatever the case may be there, do that. If you need to be more militant, if you're angry and you need to express that, then my position, I think most of our position should be trying to understand that anger, trying to get other people to understand it, because you know that anger is there for legitimate reasons. If you're still in a place where you think we can still talk, if you think that we can still have discourse, then I think that, you know, discourse may be a good idea. Educating people has been something that's worked. It's definitely worked quite a bit for me personally. So, you know, that's another path. And I also think that, you know, I'm not on YouTube. I'm a blogger, but I found that, you know, don't let people say, I don't think it's healthy to let people say, as this has been said before, that you're weak because you decided to do what works for you. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you strong. That makes you somebody who has a certain standard of respect for themselves and isn't going to compromise on that. So if you are somebody who, you know, for your own sense of respect and dignity, or for the sake of, you know, the respect and dignity of people in your comment section, need to delete comments, block comments, mess with the like bar, and decide, to take it off, whatever the case may be, that's your blocking whoever you want to, like, that's your prerogative to do what you think needs to be done. And by doing that, you give other people the permission to do what works for them.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if
that's
it's
actually
going
a
to
really
be
good
one
point.
thing that helps people, one particular approach, but perhaps all of our different approaches working together um, can stop whatever seems to be whatever seems to be growing here.
Right.
Yeah, I was
Kevin,
just
did you want? Yeah,
yeah, I
go
was just
ahead.
going to as an addendum to what Martin was saying, actually, and to link in a point that was made earlier by I think Kristi. Um, they like to call other people authoritarians, but actually they use their authoritarianism to try and force people into their very narrow envelope of acceptable behaviour. And actually, Martin makes a good point that essentially just do you, do what.
Right. Well, that'll be the note that Kevin will leave on. If you look down in the bar, there are 2 Toms, there are 2 Kristis, and there are 2 Kevins. I think there's a problem with the hangout. So I think we should maybe wrap it up there. I did maybe end on a slightly less somber note for the rest. Oh, there you are. Sorry, Kevin, you dropped out. Do you want to finish your thought?
Yeah, and I was just don't let the right wing bully authoritarians tell you how to do your thing. Do what works for you.
And can I just say, because I hope I wasn't misunderstood, that when I say I want to talk to people, that's not a prescription for anybody else, and it doesn't make anybody better, or it just makes me I am a more privileged person. I have a great support system. I'm anonymous. I'm in a good position to do it. So that's all that I was saying. So, but other
That's not
people
what.
who aren't in that place.
I just want to make clear I'm not disagreeing with that. I've gotten a lot of flack myself for engaging in discourse with people because that's my preference as well. So, I'm not trying to. I hope I didn't come across as like disagreeing with your position there.
Just wanted to make that clear, just because and to be honest, I get more flack from anti-SJWs when I cross aisles than I do from SJWs, and I don't think people really talk about that. But there are some antis out there who are very threatened by the idea of us talking, and that sort of empathy bridge being built hurt their pocketbook. So I'm very aware now of, if I'm on a hangout with somebody having a remotely enjoyable, productive conversation, there will be a hate video done. So I get that now.
Yeah.
I'm expecting several from this one, I think, because we've dared to disagree with them. So, which one of us is going to be called a communist first? I wonder.
Right. Oh, Tom, you're muted because you also dropped out and came in. So if you want to unmute yourself before to say anything.
Yeah, fuck me, bad guys, all that kind of stuff. my last thing that I need to say is illegitimati non carborundum. Oh fuck! Don't let the bastards grind you down.
Right. All right. A good note to end on. All right. So hopefully the people who were watching, you didn't have any technical problems like we've had on our end. But on behalf of all my guests, and I'll let them all say goodbye at the end. I've been Kristi. You've been awesome. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you to my guests. And I'll be seeing you guys again on the channel very soon.